It's not the truck that's cursed. 5 witchcraft-related horror stories. The Old Salem Road.
I was on a road trip with my girlfriend, Sarah, and we were excited to hit Salem, Massachusetts. We'd been planning it for months, poring over books about the history and the legends. We left Boston late, hoping to avoid traffic, but the late hour brought its own problems. Our GPS, which had been reliable for the entire trip, suddenly went haywire. The screen flickered a few times before going completely blank, leaving us with nothing but a map on my phone that was losing its signal fast. We were on some back road, and frustration was starting to set in. That's when we saw it. A weathered, crooked wooden sign at the entrance of a narrow dirt path, marked simply Old Salem Road. We figured it was an old shortcut, a bit of a scenic route, a little adventure to add to the trip. As we drove onto the dirt road, the trees seemed to grow denser, their branches twisting into strange, skeletal shapes, almost like they were reaching out to grab us. The moonlight, which had been bright enough on the main highway, was now completely blocked out, and the air grew colder. An eerie, unsettling silence fell over the car. It was the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring, a quiet that felt wrong, like the world was holding its breath. About a mile or so down the road, Sarah, who had been nervously looking out the window, gasped and pointed. "Look," she whispered, her voice a little shaky. "On the trees." I looked, and sure enough, there were carvings on the trunks. They looked like crude, ancient symbols etched deep into the bark. They were all different, but all seemed to be part of some unknown language. "That's weird," she said. "Is this a trail or something?" That's when we saw it, standing in the middle of the road, bathed in a pale, sickly light that seemed to emanate from nowhere, was a figure. It was robed and hooded, and it held an old-fashioned lantern in its hand. It didn't move, didn't seem to breathe, just stood there, beckoning us forward with a slow, deliberate motion. My heart hammered against my ribs. A primal instinct screamed at me to slam the car into reverse and get out of there. But when I looked at my rearview mirror, the road behind us was gone. There was nothing but a solid wall of thick, twisted trees, as if the path had been swallowed up behind us. The engine of my car suddenly sputtered and died, and the air filled with a suffocating, earthy smell, like a freshly dug grave. The figure began to walk toward us, its lantern casting long, dancing shadows on the trees around us. Sarah screamed and started frantically trying to restart the car, her hands shaking so much she couldn't turn the key. I fumbled with my phone, but there was no signal, no way to call for help. As the figure got closer, I could see its face, or what passed for one, a pale, gaunt thing with eyes that seemed to glow with a malevolent light. It was smiling. I finally understood. The road wasn't a shortcut, it was a trap. The figure wasn't just beckoning us, it was waiting. We were trapped on the Old Salem Road, and we were about to become another of its victims, another one of its stories. We had chosen to take a detour, but it seemed the road had chosen us first.
The Hexed Trucker.
I've been a long-haul trucker for 30 years. I've seen just about everything on the road. Weird weather systems, strange wildlife that you wouldn't believe, even a UFO or two in the middle of a desert night. But what happened to me on a delivery run through the back roads of New England, that was a different kind of strange. It wasn't something that you could just write off as a hallucination from a lack of sleep. It was real, and it was meant for me. I was driving late, past a stretch of thick wooded area where the trees seemed to grow too close to the road. It was after midnight, and I was just trying to make it to the next rest stop when I saw a strange light coming from a clearing in the trees. Normally, I wouldn't bother, but something about it made me curious. I slowed down my rig and peered into the woods. That's when I saw them. A group of people in hooded cloaks were gathered around a bonfire, their faces hidden in the deep shadows. They were swaying and chanting in a language I couldn't understand, their movements unsettling and unnatural. It was creepy, but I figured it was some kind of weird local ritual, maybe some sort of cult. I shook my head, mashed the gas, and kept on going, putting the strange sight behind me. Or so I thought. That's when things started to go wrong. The truck, which had been running perfectly for the last 2,000 miles, began to act up. The engine would sputter and die on hills, the headlights would flicker erratically, and the radio would pick up nothing but static and what sounded like faint, angry whispers. It got worse every day. The brake lines failed on a mountain pass, and I nearly went over the edge. A tire blew on the highway, and the whole truck swerved wildly. I took it to every mechanic I knew, but no one could find a single thing wrong. It was like the truck was haunted. I was starting to think I was losing my mind, but I was sure it was something more. One day, I pulled into a small, greasy-looking garage in the middle of nowhere. The owner, a grizzled old mechanic with tired eyes, looked over my rig. He didn't say much, but as he was about to send me on my way, he pointed to something on my dashboard. A small, intricate symbol had appeared, etched right into the plastic. It wasn't there before. "Son," he said, his voice low and serious. "I can't fix what ain't broken, but I've seen that kind of bad luck before." He pointed a gnarled finger at the symbol. "That's a hex," he said. "They don't curse the truck. They curse the man driving it." I never saw the hooded figures again, but every time I start my engine, I see that mark, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm driving on borrowed time, with a hex that won't let me rest. The road is my life, but now it feels like my tomb.
The Witch's Mark.
I've always been fascinated by history, especially the dark parts that most people try to forget. My obsession began in college, reading about the Salem witch trials. I wasn't interested in the well-known tourist traps. I wanted to find the forgotten places, the true sites where the dark history had actually unfolded. My research led me to an old journal entry from the 1700s that spoke of a hidden stone bridge deep in the woods, where they used to hold private trials and executions away from prying eyes. It became my personal pilgrimage to find it. After weeks of cross-referencing old maps and following faded trail markers, I finally found it. The bridge was ancient, a skeletal arch of dark, craggy stone covered in a thick blanket of moss and overgrown vines. A deep, chilling silence hung in the air around it. A silence so profound it felt like the woods themselves were holding their breath. I was crossing it, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and unease when I saw something out of place. Carved into one of the stones was a symbol I'd never seen before, and I'd studied every known symbol from that era. It wasn't a common marking. It looked like a crude, twisted knot, a series of interlocking lines that seemed to hold some sort of malevolent energy. A strange, magnetic pull drew me closer. I felt an overwhelming urge to touch it, as if the stone itself were calling to me, begging for contact. I reached out, and the moment my fingers made contact with the carving, a searing, white-hot pain shot up my arm. It felt like I had plunged my hand into a fire, a burning sensation so intense it made me scream. I stumbled back, my vision blurring, and saw a fleeting, horrifying image. A woman, her face contorted in agony, her mouth open in a silent scream, was being held down by two figures on that very bridge. Then, as quickly as it came, the vision vanished. When I looked down at my hand, the pain was gone, but the symbol was now seared onto my palm. It wasn't a scar, but a dark, raised mark that wouldn't wash off. It was permanent, a cold dread, heavier than any fear I had ever known, crept into my bones. That night, the mark began to burn again. I heard a faint, raspy whisper in my ear, a voice that was both close and impossibly distant. "Now you carry the burden," the voice hissed. "You are one of us." The mark has never faded. It's a constant, burning reminder that some stories are not meant to be found, and some secrets are not meant to be touched. I'm marked now, and every night I can hear her voice. I am forever tied to the very horror I was seeking. It's a weight I carry every single day, and I know that somewhere out there, she's watching, knowing she's found her next vessel, her next link in a chain of unending misery. And all because I couldn't resist the urge to touch a simple mark on an old stone bridge.
The Hitchhiker's Curse.
The night was a symphony of desolation. Rain lashed against the windshield of my old Ford Escort, a relentless drumming that drowned out the hum of the engine and the faint, tired music from the radio. I was driving home from my college in western Massachusetts, a 6-hour trek through rural New England on the kind of night when you feel like you're the only person left in the world. The road was a twisting ribbon of slick asphalt, hemmed in by ancient, whispering woods that seemed to lean in, ready to swallow me whole. The trees were old, twisted things, their branches gnarled and claw-like, and every so often, a flash of lightning would illuminate them, turning the forest into a monstrous, gaping mouth. It was a good night for a scary movie, not a solo drive. I was feeling the effects of my exhaustion, my eyelids heavy and my thoughts drifting. I just wanted to get home. That's when I saw her, a small, stooped figure on the side of the road, her thumb out. She was soaking wet, a dark shawl pulled tight around her shoulders, her face a pale blur in the gloom. It was an impulse, a flash of misplaced human decency that I would come to regret for the rest of my life. I didn't even think about it. I slowed down, pulled over onto the muddy shoulder, and unlocked the passenger door. She didn't say a word, didn't thank me, just got in and settled into the seat, her presence filling the car with a sudden, bone-deep cold. The temperature dropped by 10 degrees the moment she shut the door, and the air filled with a faint, musty scent of damp earth and something else, something like old, rotting leaves and regret. I tried to break the silence. "Where are you heading?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. She didn't answer right away. She just stared straight ahead, her eyes like two pieces of polished black stone, reflecting the red glow of my dashboard lights. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. Her voice was a dry, rustling sound, like paper crumbling, and it seemed to come from her throat with great effort. "Further up the road," was all she said. I tried to make conversation again, but she wouldn't respond. The silence was unnerving. I could feel her presence beside me, a dense, heavy weight that made my skin crawl. We drove for what felt like an hour in this oppressive quiet. She finally spoke again, her voice still a raspy whisper. "You see this land?" she said, her head slowly turning to look at me, her eyes boring into mine. "You think you know it. You drive through it, you build your houses on it, but you don't know it. There are things here older than your roads. Things that remember when this forest was a cathedral of power, before you came with your crosses and your iron." She was talking about curses and the old ways, about how the land itself had been tainted, and how those who lived there knew the true nature of things. "Some debts are paid not in coin, but in spirit," she rasped, and a chill went down my spine. Her words were a chilling riddle, a story without a clear plot, but with a horrifying implication. She spoke of old families and ancient feuds, of secrets buried in the very soil beneath our tires. I just wanted the drive to be over. When we reached a fork in the road, she finally pointed to a small, weathered farmhouse, its windows dark and lifeless. "This is it," she said. The old woman held out a hand that was thin and covered in wrinkles, and in her palm rested a small, intricately carved wooden doll. "A token for your kindness," she said, her voice a little stronger, a little more sinister. "To remember your good deed." I looked at the tiny, misshapen figure. It was crudely carved but felt strangely warm in my hand. It looked like a person, but twisted, with a gaping mouth and two tiny, black beads for eyes. It was unsettling. I looked up to thank her, and that's when it happened. She was gone. The passenger seat was empty. The door was still locked, the window was up, and there was no way she could have gotten out. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. I pulled over immediately, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't process it. My mind raced, searching for a logical explanation. Had she jumped out? No, the door was locked. Had I imagined it? The cold spot on the seat and the musty smell said no. And I still held the small wooden doll. It was a crude replica of me. My clothes, my hair, even the tiny bead eyes were exactly like mine. I tried to throw it out the window, but the car doors were still locked, and it wouldn't open. I finally got out of the car, my heart pounding, and hurled the doll into the dark woods. I got back in the car, my mind racing, and drove home as fast as I could. I tried to convince myself it was just a strange occurrence, a trick of the light and a lack of sleep. But when I woke up the next morning, the wooden doll was sitting on my bedside table. Its small, carved face was turned to me, and for a terrifying second, its black bead eyes seemed to gleam in the morning light. I felt a cold dread creep into my bones. My life began to unravel. It started with small things. I failed a test I'd studied for all week. My car would randomly sputter and die, always at the worst possible moments. A bookshelf in my dorm room suddenly collapsed, ruining some of my most important books. My friends started avoiding me, saying I was acting strange, but I knew it was the doll. I could feel its presence. It was a suffocating weight in every room I entered. I'd leave it on the table and walk out of the room, only to return and find it on my bed, its head tilted in a way it hadn't been before. I started having nightmares. The old woman was always there, laughing as the doll slowly began to fall apart in my hands. "The curse," she would cackle. "The debt is being paid." I tried everything. I tried to burn it, but it wouldn't catch fire. I tried to bury it, but the next day, it would be sitting on my front doorstep, covered in dirt. I even threw it into a river, and the next day, it was sitting on the banks, waiting for me. I realized she hadn't needed a ride. She needed a vessel. And the doll wasn't a gift. It was a curse. I was a driver in her twisted game, and the doll was the key. She had cursed my car and my life, and I was now a driver on a one-way path to misery. I still have a doll. It's hidden away, but I can feel its presence, a weight on my chest. I know she's waiting. She's waiting for me to be brave enough to drive that road again, to return her gift so that the curse can move on to its next victim. But the whispers from the windshield tell me I'll never be able to get rid of it. I'm hers now, and so is this road.
The Tollbooth Guardian.
I've been a professional driver for a decade, and I've seen some strange things on the highway, but nothing could have prepared me for what I encountered on the interstate last night. I was on a long haul, driving through the Appalachian Mountains, and it was well past midnight. I was just trying to make good time, listening to a true crime podcast when I saw it. It was a single, solitary toll booth, sitting right in the middle of a 6-lane highway. There were no lights, no signs, no other cars. The structure itself was ancient, made of dark, mossy stone, with a flickering lantern hanging from the roof. It wasn't on any map, and there was no way it could have been real. It was just an impossible thing, but there it was blocking my path. My heart hammered against my ribs, and a wave of ice-cold dread washed over me. I tried to back up, but the car doors locked, and the car wouldn't go into reverse. I was trapped. As I sat there, paralyzed by fear, a figure emerged from the shadows inside the booth. It was an old woman, her face a web of deep wrinkles, and her eyes, 2 pinpricks of light in the darkness, seemed to glow with an unnerving intensity. I could see her lips moving, but I couldn't hear what she was saying. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I tried to turn my car around, but the car wouldn't budge. I was completely and utterly stuck. She held out a gnarled hand, not for money, but for something else. "You have to pay to pass through," she said, her voice a dry, rustling sound, like dead leaves skittering on the pavement. "Give me a promise." I didn't understand. A promise? What kind of promise? I shook my head, my mind racing, and tried to drive around the booth, but the road ahead of me seemed to dissolve into a thick black fog. The old woman laughed, a sound like gravel grinding together, and pointed a long, bony finger at me. "The price of your passage is paid," she said, her voice now a chilling whisper. "But the cost has not." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The car doors were still locked, and the road ahead of me was nothing but a black, impenetrable wall. The old woman's laughter echoed in the darkness, and I could feel her presence all around me, a cold, suffocating weight. I was trapped with no way out. The toll booth was a gateway, and I had been chosen to pay the price. The old woman's words echoed in my mind. "The price of your passage is paid, but the cost has not." I'm still driving, waiting for her to reappear and ask for my promise again. I'm stuck in this loop, a prisoner of the Tollbooth Guardian, forced to drive this endless road until I finally give in and pay the ultimate price.